Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a bit of a shortcut, actually, a rapid look into the huge energy infrastructure build-out happening in India, our source material. It's a recent investor presentation. Prepared by GE Vernova T&D India Limited for the Nuvama India Conference 2025. Now look, this isn't about buying stock, not at all. We're using this company's own deep dive data more like a lens. You see, when a major player like this shares their strategy, they inadvertently give us the roadmap, the key numbers, the targets, the drivers shaping India's entire power grid towards 2030, even 2032. So our mission today is simple: extract those essential insights for you.
Yeah, and it's a really important area because this sector, transmission and distribution T&D, is basically the engine room for the whole energy transition. It's the critical link, often invisible, right?
Okay.
But it connects the energy supply, could be solar, could be thermal, to where the demand is just exploding. Think cities, EVs, factories, and increasingly these massive data centers.
Okay. And the sources, they seem to show two things at once. One, just how massive this challenge is, but also the industrial muscle already there to tackle it. Let's start with that capability. First off, you have to acknowledge their scope. It kind of jumps out from the presentation. Their global footprint is huge. Worldwide exports covering over 60 countries, Asia, Europe, Latin America, Africa.
Yeah.
It's extensive.
That signals real industrial maturity, doesn't it? It's
Right.
not just a local shop. But what's really interesting, I think, is how they've harnessed that global capability for the domestic market. Under the Make in India initiative,
Huh.
the presentation highlights delivering over 100 units domestically.
Yeah.
So that expertise isn't just flowing outwards.
Right. They're actually building it in India, for India, which must be crucial for grid resilience, right?
Absolutely critical.
Okay, so let's look at their domestic track record. The scale seems enormous. They mention projects like your TDSM, NTAMC, REMC, ULDC. Now, for someone listening who may be interested in infrastructure, why do those acronyms matter? What are they?
Well, think of them as the grid's intelligence layer. URTDSM, that's Unified Real-Time Data and SCADA Management. NTAMC is the National Transmission Asset Management Center. These are the operational brains. The central control systems monitoring everything, optimizing power flow, trying to prevent blackouts.
Ah, okay, so not just poles and wires, but the smarts behind it.
Exactly. You can't safely integrate lots of variable renewables like solar and wind without sophisticated systems like these.
And the hardware side, also impressive. They mentioned delivering around 800 units of 765 kV power transformers in India. Is that significant just because it's a big number, 800? Or is there something specific about 765 kV?
Oh, it's definitely about the specifics.
Okay.
765 kV is ultra-high voltage. We're talking serious power transmission capacity. It's not just a number, it's what you need to move massive amounts of electricity efficiently across India's vast distances. Think connecting, say, huge solar parks out in Rajasthan to industrial hubs maybe thousands of kilometers away.
Minimizing losses over those distances.
Precisely. That high voltage is key for efficiency.
And they also highlight a major tech achievement, this huge turnkey project, transferring 3,000 megawatts from Champa to Kurukshetra using HVDC technology.
Yeah, 3,000 megawatts, that's like the output of 3 big nuclear reactors, roughly. It's a massive amount of power. And doing it with HVDC, high voltage direct current, that's significant.
Oh, why HVDC specifically?
It's generally more efficient for very long distance bulk power transfer. Fewer losses than traditional AC over those kinds of distances. That Champa-Kurukshetra link is a major power artery for India. Building that shows they have serious technological muscle for these big national level projects.
Okay, here's maybe the aha moment for you, the listener, that really underlines this domestic strength. The source says the company was the first manufacturer in India for several basic but critical components. Things like current transformers, circuit breakers, capacitor voltage transformers, even line traps. Why does being the first to make, say, a line trap even matter in the grand scheme of this energy transition?
Well, it sounds small, but it signifies something deep. Foundational capability. A line trap filters out noise on the power line, protects equipment. It's essential. Being the domestic pioneer for these sorts of components means India isn't completely dependent on complex global supply chains for the nuts and bolts of grid safety and efficiency.
They're building it from the ground up, literally.
Exactly. It's about self-reliance in critical infrastructure.
Okay, so that establishes the capability they bring. Now, let's connect this to the why. Why this massive investment now? What are the big pressures?
Yeah, because infrastructure like this doesn't just appear. There are huge forces driving it. Beyond the obvious, climate change and the green transition, the drivers are very much societal and digital. First, there's still a basic need. The presentation notes that, believe it or not, many people still lack reliable electricity access today. That's a baseline driver.
Still a fundamental development challenge.
Yes,
Yeah.
but layered right on top of that is this, well, digital tsunami. Think data centers. Global demand from data centers alone is projected to hit over 900 terawatt hours by 2030.
900 TWh. Let's just wrap your head around that number. It's enormous.
And concentrated.
Exactly. And data centers, they don't just sit power. They need perfect power. 247 absolutely stable, high quality. Meeting that kind of demand, it requires huge T&D upgrades, redundancy, reinforcement, often in specific urban or semi-urban areas.
And then there's the transport shift, adding to that urban power demand. EVs. The projection mentioned is for EV share to grow significantly, like over 20% year-over-year growth in sales by 2030.
Multiply that across millions of vehicles charging up, mostly in cities.
That's a huge new load hitting the distribution grid, the local networks.
Absolutely. Which brings us neatly to the money side, the financial scale. The sources talk about the massive annual investment needed globally in clean energy by 2030. And it's not just building new stuff, it's the capital needed to safely phase out old coal plants worldwide to meet net zero goals.
Okay, so massive global capital flow. How does India fit into that picture specifically? Well, the sources flag India's projected global GDP rank by 2030. It's expected to be very high, like top 3 or 4. That level of economic growth demands energy security, industrial-grade, reliable power.
So the growth itself drives the need for power infrastructure.
Precisely. And that directly fuels the importance of national plans, like the NEP2, the National Electricity Plan. It positions India as arguably the most critical place globally for this kind of rapid grid build-out right now.
It's a feedback loop then. Growth needs power, power enables growth.
A very high-stakes feedback loop, yes.
Right. This is where we get into the real nuts and bolts. The specific numbers, the targets that show the sheer scale of this T&D expansion needed by 2030, 2032.
And the goals are, frankly, incredibly ambitious. Take the generation mix. Coal is still vital for grid stability now, no question.
Wow.
But the projection, coal's share of generation is set to drop significantly by 2030, down from 52% back in 2022.
Wow, 52% down to, well, considerably less. That's a fast shift.
It's incredibly fast, and that capacity needs replacing with something reliable immediately.
Which leads us to renewables. The targets there are huge too, right? For total renewable contribution by 2032.
Massive targets. But, the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow. Intermittency is the challenge.
So how does India plan to manage that, to backstop all this green power?
Storage. That's the key. The sources specifically highlight a target for pump storage projects, PSP, in gigawatts by 2030. PSP is basically using reservoirs like giant batteries. It's currently the most mature, large-scale, long-duration storage tech we have.
So hitting those PSP targets would be a game changer for reliability.
Absolutely. It fundamentally changes how you can integrate large amounts of intermittent renewables onto the grid reliably.
Okay, let's talk transmission lines, the actual infrastructure needed. The volume of new construction sounds staggering. They mention specific targets for ISTS, that's the Interstate Transmission System.
Correct. Big national highways for electrons. And there are specific plans, measured in kilometers in capacity, just to connect all the new renewable energy zones by 2030.
And it's not just connecting the new green sources, is it? It's about strengthening the whole grid.
Exactly. They're also targeting major expansions in interregional transfer capacity. That means being able to move more power between different parts of the country easily. Plus, a rise in cross-border links, too, by 2030. That helps balance supply and demand across wider areas and boosts regional energy security with neighboring countries.
Now, here's a critical point from the sources about how this gets built. It says 90% of all transmission projects, 220 chilis and above, are slated under something called TBCB. Can you break that down for us? What is TBCB and why is that 90% figure so important?
Right. TBCB stands for Tariff-Based Competitive Bidding. What it means is that the vast majority, 9 out of 10, of these vital high-voltage projects aren't just assigned to a company. They have to be won. It's through an intense, open, competitive bidding process. The winner builds and operates the line for a pre-agreed tariff over many years.
Okay, so competition drives down costs for the government.
That's the idea. Drives efficiency, lowers capital costs, but it also totally changes the game for companies like the one we're looking at.
So.
Because it means just having the technical capability isn't enough. You have to be incredibly sharp on cost, on execution, on project management to actually win the bids and make a profit.
Yeah.
Execution becomes paramount.
Got it. Intense competition.
Yeah.
Now, connecting this all back to people, The sources mention societal factors too, a projected rise in India's urban population by 2030, plus a documented rise in energy use per person over the last decade.
Yeah, and that relentless demand pressure cannot be overstated. Think about that urban growth.
Yeah.
You're basically needing to power the equivalent of a new major city every few years. So this T&D expansion isn't just about hitting climate targets. It's fundamental to maintaining and hopefully improving the quality of life for a rapidly urbanizing population that wants more reliable power.
The infrastructure has to run just to stand still, almost.
In a way, yes, it has to expand rapidly just to keep pace with sheer demographic and economic reality.
Okay, so given that intense TBCB competition and these frankly staggering 2030 targets, let's glance at the operational numbers shared in the presentation. Do they suggest the company feels confident it can actually deliver on this scale?
Well, they certainly paint a picture of acceleration. You can see momentum building. Let's look at maybe three key indicators they shared, likely related to things like order intake, revenue, that sort of thing. First is a near-term trend. One metric, let's maybe call it order book value for argument's sake, shows steady growth from 126.6 in March 25 up to 129.6 by June 25.
Okay, solid, consistent progress there. But the really interesting part seems to be the projected leap forward, comparing Q1 of 2025 to Q1 of 2026.
Exactly. That's where you see the dramatic acceleration signal. For example, one metric, maybe representing new order inflow, jumps from 9.6 projected in Q1 25 to 13.3 in Q1 26. That's a big
A
jump.
significant increase, yeah.
Then another one, perhaps tracking revenue from projects completed, leaps from 1.8 to 3.9. That's more than doubling in just one projected year.
Whoa, okay. More than doubling.
And a third metric, maybe related to capacity commissioned or something similar, goes from 10.3 up to 16.2, also a very strong increase.
So those are pretty aggressive forward-looking numbers, especially that doubling figure. It suggests they're signaling very strongly to investors, we're ready, we expect to win a big slice of that TBCB pie we just talked about.
That's definitely the interpretation. They're projecting confidence that they can execute at scale in that competitive environment. These kinds of operational forecasts underpin the financial story needed to justify tackling those massive national infrastructure goals. It suggests they believe they're positioned to really capitalize on these huge trends: digitalization, urbanization, renewables. Hashtags tag outro.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, the listener? In essence, this deep dive using the GE Vernova T&D presentation shows us a few key things. India's T&D transition is absolutely monumental in scale. It's being driven by global forces like digital demand, those data centers, but it's underpinned by serious domestic industrial muscle, shown by things like being the first manufacturer of key parts, and it's all being accelerated by really aggressive national targets for cutting coal use and boosting renewables.
Yeah, the sheer scale of grid expansion needed is just staggering. But it's not arbitrary. It's dictated by real societal changes, more people in cities, rising energy use, the shift to EVs. Honestly, the success of India's entire economic story over the next decade really hinges on pulling off this rapid, reliable infrastructure build. It touches everything.
Okay, so we've looked at the targets cutting coal, ramping up renewables, building storage like pumped hydro by 2030, 2032. We've seen the competitive TBCB landscape where most of this will happen. So we want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. Given all that the ambition, the targets, the competition, what do you think is the single biggest policy challenge facing the rapid, reliable integration of all this new power onto India's grid? Is it more about managing the financial risks inherent in that TBCB model to make sure projects actually get built affordably? Or is it more about designing the complex regulations needed to properly value and deploy all that energy storage, like PSB, that's essential for keeping the lights on with so much intermittent renewable energy? Financial risk versus regulatory design for storage. Something to think about. We'll see you on the next deep dive.